Infinite impact.
It's a great day to be great, and it's a great day to continue to build the legacy and continue to build the platform that I call leadership. Welcome to this episode of the Infinite Impact Leadership Podcast. I am the host, Dr. Daryl Crosby, and I am honored and humbled that you have chosen to spend the next few minutes of your life with me. And in this episode, we are checking for understanding with the one and only Dr. Synetheia N. Newby, as she shares with us some key leadership principles and what 2020 taught her and the lessons she's taken into 2021. Let's go. Hey, what's good, everybody? And welcome to the Infinite Impact Leadership Podcast. And I'm excited today because we have a very special young lady with us. We have Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. Now, hold on. Before she starts talking, let me tell you a little bit about her. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. She is a personable, inspiring, and innovative professional committed to equipping people and organizations to achieve optimal success in life, faith, and leadership. She is the owner and the founder of I Am Dr. Newby Global LLC, and she is the president and lead consultant of Greater Works Global Solutions. She's also the creator of the Baku brand. Dr. Synetheia encourages individuals to live and lead boldly, authentically, courageously, and unapologetically. She possesses 20 plus years of demonstrated and dynamic experience as a motivational speaker, training specialist, organizational strategist, and coach. Dr. Synetheia's essential areas of expertise include leadership development, personal development, diversity and inclusion, and crisis intervention and management. She possesses over 20 years of experience as a leadership development trainer, 10 years experience as a local government executive, 18 years experience as an executive leader in the nonprofit and faith-based sectors, and 19 years of experience as an entrepreneurial leader. That's why she's perfect for this podcast, y'all. You hear the theme in there, leader and experience. Now watch this. As an author, Dr. Synetheia, she's written 3 ebooks, and her first published work, The Liberated Leader, Leading Up from the Inside Out. And it is scheduled for release in the summer of 2021. So be on the lookout for that. Dr. Synetheia is a summa cum laude graduate of Elizabeth City State University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice. She holds a Master of Science degree in human resources management with a human and organizational development concentration. She earned a doctorate in strategic leadership with the concentration in leadership coaching from Regent University. Now, I need everyone to welcome to the platform of leadership, Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. What's going on, doctor? How you doing?
Hello, Dr. D. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing even better now that you are with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I love to hang out and chat with you. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love to pick your brain. And when we're talking about this leadership thing, and if you all have paid attention to the bio, you see that she's not a rookie to this thing. Now, there was a point in her life where she had to learn leadership, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But, you know, time has gone by, and she spent years training and learning and studying and researching leadership and what effective leadership is. So that's why she is perfect for this podcast. But before we get into it, I do have a couple questions I want to ask you.
Sure, go for it.
In the form of a game, an old classic game called Would You Rather? Okay. So I'm only going to give you a couple of them. 5. I'll give you 5. Let's say 5.
Okay.
All right. Now, when you answer them, if you want to elaborate on them, that's fine too. But if you want to just give me a straight answer and leave it alone, that's fine. All right, here we go.
All right.
Would you rather always have a full phone battery or a full gas tank?
I'm will say a full phone battery because my gas tank is always running on E and I need a full charge if I need to call for help.
That's true. That's true. You sound like me. I can't stand it, but hey, it is what it is. What's the old saying? I know my car. I know what I can do and can't do.
I know what I can and can't do, but sometimes it gets a little squirrely, so I'm gonna need that phone charged the whole day up.
Okay, all right, good. That's good. All right, here we go. Next one.
All right.
Would you rather lounge by the pool or on the beach?
They both sound hot, and I don't like hot weather. But if I had to choose, I would rather lay by the pool.
Okay. Respect.
With a big floppy hat on.
The floppy. Okay. All right. Gotta have that.
And big sunglasses.
Okay. Just protect all of that.
To protect all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Okay. All right. Would you rather lose your sight or lose your memories?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think I'd rather lose my sight.
Okay.
Memories are beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
You lose memory, you can't get that back. There's a possibility, with the way science works today, that I could possibly get my sight back, but I could never retrieve memories.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, I'll take memories for 1,200, Alex.
Okay, all right. Respect to Alex. Okay. We're back. Yeah, but that's a tough one there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can go on and on with that one. All right, we're gonna go on and on with these questions here.
Wow.
Would you rather have a pause or a rewind button in your life?
I'd say pause. You know what's interesting? Something that I teach my coaching clients all the time is to practice the pause.
Okay.
Because in the pause, what you're able to do is to give yourself a moment to think critically about what's happening. You can give yourself permission to reflect. You can give yourself permission to get your whole life together before you respond in a way that you can never take back. Yeah. So I think pausing is powerful. Yeah. I think rewind has some element of regret to it. And I don't think that we should live lives of regret. I think surely we all, have parts in our past that we're not happy about. We're not pleased about those areas. Cool. But I think pause helps us also to stay in the present moment instead of living in the past.
Those are very good leadership principles there.
Yeah.
And I would love to learn a little more about your leadership coaching classes because, self-reflection is how we grow. And that's something, if we can't self-reflect as leaders, then we just don't need to be leading.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, that pause, that's powerful. I like that. I like that. Okay. Last one. All right, here we go. Would you rather be the best player on the worst team or be the worst player on the best team?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. Wow. Would you rather be the best player on the worst team? Or would you rather be the worst player on the best team?
It's interesting because both responses remind me of opportunities for growth. So I think I would want to be the best player on the worst team because it gives me an opportunity to teach them something they don't know so that they can grow and become better. It's opportunity.
I love it.
Yeah. But it's crazy though, because the other side of it is that if I'm the worst player on the best team, then it's an opportunity for me to grow. Absolutely. But yeah, I think I'd want to be the best so I can teach other people. I can pass that on. Yeah. And I call that the leadership lineage, and that's a part of legacy, leaving behind. And as a leader and you talk about growth and you talk about development, you can develop and grow in both situations. Absolutely. As long as you're willing to pause, as long as you're willing to
want to grow, because if we really take a look at it from a athletic and a sports perspective, some of the best players don't care. It's a level of arrogance that's there.
Yeah.
It's a level of cockiness. It's a level of, hey, I'm the best, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't care about no one else.
I think it takes a real humility to seize opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes moments are lost where we can grow if we're not humble enough to see that we need to grow.
Yes.
And I think you're exactly right. I love the language of leadership lineage, because it's really about who we should be as leaders, that we shouldn't just be leading just to exalt ourselves. We should be developing other leaders. We shouldn't be developing more followers. We should be developing leaders. Who then take the torch and take the baton, and they'll run in their own way to lead other people. So, but it takes humility to do that.
Absolutely. So that brings me to the question for Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. Where did it begin for you? Like, when did you notice? So let's go back. Let's be transparent here.
Okay.
So Dr. Synetheia N. Newby and Dr. Daryl Crosby, we go back.
Way back.
We go back. If I pull out some photo albums, I'm sure I can find one with both. I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to do that.
Nobody wants those problems, Dr. Daryl. Let's just nod and say that we did, but nobody wants these problems.
Yeah, I can find some pictures of us very young. Wow. And going back. But you've always been just a bright person. You've always been an extremely smart person. I mean, sometimes you can look at people and you can just talk to them for a little bit, and it's like, wow, yeah, they sharp. For just a couple of minutes of conversation, and even back then, I feel that you kind of stood out above the rest. So you've always been a sharp individual. But as far as leaders in that leadership piece, because there's a lot of sharp people that aren't necessarily cut out to be leaders.
Absolutely.
For whatever reason, and that's not a knock on them.
Yeah.
But where did it start for you? Like, where or when did you realize that you had these leadership qualities? When did that start?
What's interesting, in the opening of my book, The Liberated Leader, that's coming out this summer, I actually talk about my roots in leadership and how, for me, I'm probably one of those people who fell into the category of what people called a born leader. Okay. Knowing what I know now, I don't know that I subscribe to that notion of a born leader, because I think it somehow separates people and somehow says that only certain people can be leaders and others cannot. So I don't know that I necessarily still subscribe to that notion, but people always said, oh, you're just a natural born leader. You just have the ability to naturally command a space and get people moving in the right direction. And so I can think back to that being said of me, Dr. Daryl, to middle school, high school. Yeah. Would I say that I recognized that at that time? I don't know that I would say that. At that time, I think I would have said that I was just in positions where people pulled on me or voluntold me that I had to operate in that role. And so by virtue of that, I just started doing it. What I would say now, reflecting back, is I think that those moments were training grounds for me. I think that those moments of being placed in positions where I was at the helm and had to lead my peers or be a voice in a room or a representative in a room helped to shape who I am now as a leader. And so for me, that foundation was really just the jump off point for me to develop more skills. And more importantly, as I got older, to learn more about Synetheia and what Synetheia's strengths were and what Synetheia's areas for improvement were, because those things were not taught to me as a natural born leader. I was only given kudos and applause. But the reality is, all of us as leaders have areas for improvement where they are not applause worthy.
Absolutely.
So my evolution as a leader has included an increased sense of self-awareness and not seeing that self-awareness as a place to exalt myself above other people, nor to diminish the strength that I have as an individual, but to learn how to have this melody or this harmony with the two, between strengths and areas for improvement, and seizing the areas for growth. So I think for me, it started as a child, but the realization didn't happen until I was an adult. It just didn't come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wish I could say, Dr. D, that the realization came in positive ways.
Okay.
The realizations of who I am as a leader often came as a result of mistakes that I made.
Okay.
Of not leading well.
Okay.
They didn't tell me that either as a natural born leader.
Yeah. And you know, they say that there's two ways that we can learn. We can learn through those mistakes, and we can learn through mentors.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions before we go, well, I'll go ahead and give you the question. One of the questions I want to get into is like, who were the mentors, or who are the mentors of Dr. Synetheia N. Newby? Even as a young leader, you know, who were some of those people that you looked up to and that you learned from? But before we even get there, I want to go back into, and you hit it on the head, a lot of those areas of growth, man. We don't realize that without some level of pain, like some level of embarrassment. You know, how did you respond to that? You know, what it hurts, you know, because a lot of times, you know, it's in front of peers. You know, when you are humbled, in a sense, when you are brought down to reality, you know, it's in front of people, you know, and so, and I don't know if that's exactly was your situation, but how did you handle, you know, being smacked in the face with that reality that, hey, you're not quite ready for that yet. Let's scale back. Let's learn some other things. You know, how did you handle all of that?
In my 20s, my early 20s, my 20s, I didn't always handle it well.
Okay.
Pride wouldn't let me handle it well, right? Because part of being a natural born leader, that notion of being a natural born leader, is that people boost us up so much that the fall feels detrimental. So what I did to cushion the fall was operate from a place of pride. So pride then, when I would make a mistake and be held accountable publicly, or would be called on the carpet about something, pride would try to make up excuses as to why it happened. Pride would also cause me to blame other people and say, well, if such and such had done X, Y, and Z, this would not have happened. Right. So that was my response in my 20s. With the help of mentors, in my late 20s, going into my 30s, I was able to corral that in and say, wait a minute, being a leader means that you take responsibility for your actions. And it means that you take responsibility when your actions are good and when your actions are poor. And literally, it took mentors to help me to get my mind around that. And it began to develop a humility in me that I didn't have before. So now when I make mistakes and make missteps, then what happens is humility says, I own what happened. I own the misstep. You know what? This is where I missed the mark. And it also means that sometimes that will require me to apologize and make amends to people individually, including the people who are my followers. And it may require for me to do that publicly in front of a group of people. It just depends on the nature of the mistake and the misstep. But only humility could have taught me that. And only a mentor could have helped me to realize that. Because it didn't go well initially, Dr. D. I wasn't interested in being told I was wrong. It's a crush to your ego, you know, and as a child, it was interesting because I struggled with rejection. So to own a mistake would then somehow in my mind substantiate that I wasn't good enough. You know?
And all of that brings about a level of transparency.
Yes.
That people respect in their leaders, and that leaders should have, you know, should feel comfortable with being transparent to the people that they're serving or the people that they're leading, because it just brings them back down to earth. You know, it makes the people that they're serving, makes them realize that, oh, you know, they made a mistake. I can make it's okay.
It's okay. Yes.
It's okay in this space, what we're creating what we're building. It's
Yeah.
okay for me to make this mistake. I
Yeah.
just saw my leader make that mistake, and she was transparent with it. So
Mhm.
now that opens up more communication. That opens up a different level of trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when people can trust their leader and they feel trusted by the leader, man, the production levels are, that can go out the roof.
Yeah. And because leadership is relationship.
Absolutely.
Like leadership is a dynamic, ever evolving relationship, which means that everything we do as leaders has to be intentional and it has to be with the relationship in mind. And so one of the biggest things that even research has shown is that when those who are following us, whether they're on our team, our staff, whatever title you use to describe those that you are leading, trust is imperative.
Yes.
Because if they cannot trust you, then they're not going to follow you. They'll give you the appearance of following. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that, Synetheia. Oh, no problem. But they'll go back to their office, their desk, their cubicle or whatever, and they'll be thinking about something else, another way that they're going to operate. Why? Because I've not earned their trust.
Right.
And it's reciprocal, right? In a relationship, it goes both ways. But as a leader, I've got to set the pulse and the pace for building trust in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So things like that, of course, you've learned some things on your own. But going back to the other question, like, who were your mentors? Who are the people that you can call out and shout out and say that they were a part of the process of Dr. Synetheia N. Newby becoming Dr. Synetheia N. Newby?
The first person that I think about is my third grade teacher, Mrs. McGowan.
Educators out there.
Yes. Mrs. McGowan, what I remember about her is I always felt like she was really hard on me. What I came to understand, even at times when she called my parents and was like, I need you to come in and we need to talk about Synethia's performance. And I would sit, I don't know if they still do parent teacher conferences, Dr. D?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, because we had parent teacher conferences, yes. And it was nothing for your teacher to call your parents and say, we all need to come in and have a huddle and have a conversation. And I remember being a part of one of those huddles, and I heard my third grade teacher say something that I never knew that she thought about me. She said to my mother, she said, Synetheia is very smart. She's very sharp. She does well at X, Y, and Z. Here's the areas for growth for her that I see are a struggle. She struggles with time management. She struggles with trying to get things done perfectly, so then she doesn't get it done in enough time. And that always stuck with me because she saw something in me that sometimes we miss about our own selves. And even as I got older, I noticed that same pattern, Dr. D, that same thing that she talked about that I remember at the age of 8. I saw that same pattern showing up in middle school and in high school and even into college. And I could always hear her voice saying, that I was smart, I was brilliant, but this was the area I needed to work on. Yeah. That was good critical feedback. Yeah. And it then takes me to a second mentor who's passed away, Dr. Mildred Sexton.
Okay.
Dr. Mildred Sexton was my 7th grade English teacher.
Okay.
And I admired her so, because when I looked at Dr. Sexton, one, she was a woman who looked like me. Her skin looked like mine. Sure. And to have that point of identification growing up in the 80s wasn't always there in the educational setting or even other settings that you would go into. You didn't see a lot of Black women or women from communities of color at the helm. Right. And she was smart. I mean, she was so smart, Dr. D. I would sit in class and just admire the way she would teach us. And I would think, oh my gosh, I want to be like Dr. Sexton when I get older.
Right.
And what Dr. Sexton taught me was strength of character. It was the way she talked to us. She talked to us as we were brilliant and smart and innovative. And she talked to us in a way that challenged us in our behavior and our conduct. So when you went to English class with Dr. Sexton, you were not going to just learn English. You were also going to learn how to conduct yourself and what is appropriate. What is the character that you should have, even as a seventh grader?
Yeah.
And I never forgot that. And Dr. Sexton ended up becoming the principal at Spratly Middle School. I think it's called Spratly Center for the Gifted now, perhaps. But she ended up becoming the principal there, but subsequently passed away from an illness. But I always remember that about Dr. Sexton, that she taught me strength and she taught me character. So you have with those two mentors who were both educators, which lets us know that there's something powerful about educators, that teachers are not just teachers. Teachers are leaders.
Absolutely. I say that all the time. Teachers are leaders, leaders are teachers.
Yes, absolutely, because they influence us. You think back to 8-year-old Synetheia, then 12-year-old Synetheia, and now at 45-year-old Synetheia, I still remember the lessons from 8-year-old and 12-year-old. That's influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so each of them taught me something different. Mrs. McGowan taught me about the importance of having a level of self-awareness and to be able to take critical feedback, because as leaders, you have to be able to take critical feedback. And Dr. Sexton taught me about the importance of character and how you conduct yourself. Because as leaders, if we don't operate with integrity, then what we do doesn't matter. If we can't be counted on for truth and to do what we say we're going to do, it renders us ineffective.
Absolutely. And that's why I love having these discussions with you, because we believe in the same principles. Like, I have this thing called character over content.
Yeah.
Always. I don't care what type of leader or what field you're in. If it's in a medical field, if you're in law, if you're in education, if that doesn't matter. The content, the character of that leader is what's going to push that organization, push that school, push whatever. It's going to push them to that next level.
Absolutely.
You can learn content. And me being in the educational field, I can learn, or someone can learn language arts and math and science. They can learn all of that.
Yeah.
But if the character of that teacher or that leader of the building or that leader of the school division, if that's not there, none of that stuff matters.
No.
None of it matters.
It's the whole principle that I teach about leading up from the inside out. And I use this with all of my leadership coaching clients, is that leadership, I can teach you skills. I'm a leadership trainer.
Yes.
I do leadership development training all the time. We can talk about people skills, professional skills. We can do all the skills we want. Sure. But if your character cannot support those skills, then your execution will never be sufficient.
Absolutely.
So you'll have all this content on skills that Dr. Synetheia has taught you, but if you don't have on the inside of you the character to carry out the weight of being a leader, then you learn all these skills for naught. Yeah. So I often stretch my coaches, they say, oh, well, I need to work on my time management. I need to work on my decision making. Okay, I can teach you systems for those, but let's get to the root of why that's a disconnect for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to, you mentioned Miss McGowan and Dr. Sexton, those being influential teachers that brought you to where you are now, your platform now. So, and I guess in a sense, you've already done this because you have these training platforms that you have. So I was going to ask you if you had to teach a master class on leadership, and you already have the curriculum. So this probably isn't even fair to ask, but you teaching a master class and you have these young people who are learning leadership. Like, what are your points of emphasis? What do you want them to leave your class? If there was, you could put a number, if there were 3 things or 3 to 5 things that you want them to learn or to walk away with, what would they be?
That's tough. Because, as a leadership trainer, we think all of it's important.
Right, exactly.
It's all important. But But I think that there's the first thing that comes out that I've mentioned a lot is the power of self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think is something definitely I would incorporate in a master class, because it is the ability to reflect, to do self-reflection and self-evaluation. In our workplaces, we do performance evaluations all the time. So whether we are the ones who are doing the evaluating or we're being evaluated, that's a part of our performance management systems and employment. Well, as a leader, we have to have our own performance management systems that don't have anything to do with other people. We have to have the ability to reflect on our own selves and be aware of what we bring into the leadership space. What are the strengths I bring into the space? And this is where, one of the favorite assessment tools that I use is by Gallup, the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment. I absolutely love it because it helps to, at the core level, show you what your top 5 strengths are. Because when you come into a space as a leader, you need to know what you're bringing in with you. This is what I bring to the table. This is how I can contribute to the conversation. So very important. And the other side of that is that I also am aware of where I need more growth. So then when I come into the space, I can also come into the space open to learn. Okay. So I come in knowing what I can contribute, but I also come in knowing what I can take away with me. And so that's why the self-awareness is so important. And even when we have to make critical decisions as leaders, self-awareness plays a tremendous role because it challenges us to make sure that we're not making decisions out of our own end game, what we want to happen, as opposed to what's the best thing for the organization that I'm making this decision about. So self-awareness is so key. Definitely, I would talk about that. And these are not necessarily in order, but the second one I would also talk about is self-care.
Okay.
I always say that leader care is self-care. That means that we can't bring our best self into our leadership if we are not taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Because if we have glaring deficits in those areas, we bring that into our leadership. So what that means is that my emotional intelligence, my EQ, could be off, meaning my ability to understand what's happening with those who are on my team and to be sensitive to that and to know how to respond to it. My EQ could be off if there's something off with me emotionally. So what that means practically is that if I'm carrying, let's say, baggage from my last workplace. Yeah. And something didn't go well, it left such a stain, a burn, a taint on the inside of me. If I carry that with me into the next role that I have as a leader and I don't resolve or process through what happened, I'll carry that negativity into the next situation. Sure. So self-care says that I do more than go get a massage on a monthly basis, right? I do more than choosing to spend a day at the beach reading a book because that's what I want to do for myself. Right. Self-care says that I am tuned into what I need to be as whole as possible in mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. And that self-care piece is so important in that way. So then in that way, self-care becomes not something we do, Dr. D, on a monthly basis, but it's something you integrate on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. What that means is that you ask yourself, how can I take care of myself today? What can I do today to be intentional about paying attention to what's happening with me in mind, body, and spirit? What can I do to nurture those sides of myself today? Yeah. Because most of the time we say to ourselves, well, I don't have enough time, to go and do that. Yeah. But it really challenges us to think about what I do on a daily basis. And again, I work with my coaches on that. You don't work with Dr. Synetheia and we don't talk about self-care because I need you bringing your best into your leadership. So it's self-awareness, there's self-care. And then I think the third thing is what we already touched on as well, is talking about the importance of character. I think certainly we can look all around us, Dr. D, whether it is in the government sector, whether it is in our faith communities. I mean, you can really look into any sector and we can see the outcome of what happens when we are not focused on our character and operating in integrity.
Yes.
It has to be a priority. And it really loops back into the self-awareness. But in a masterclass, I would really hone in on that integrity piece.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity matters.
Yes. Yes.
Your why matters. And if we're not clear on our why, we'll easily use our influence to manipulate people. Leadership is not manipulation.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, yeah, self-awareness, self-care, and really hone in on character as it relates to our integrity.
I tell you what, I think we need a quick break after those nuggets right there. And after that masterclass, you know, those bullet points that in that masterclass, that's a beautiful class right there. So we're going to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. And we're going to talk a little more about some of the things that Dr. Synetheia N. Newby is doing. Okay, everybody, we are back, and we are back with Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. And in this segment here, I want to give her the floor because she's been doing some great things, but this is one particular project that's coming out soon, and I'm excited for it. And it's called Lioness Lead, Stories of Triumph Over Fear. Dr. Newby, Dr. Synetheia N. Newby, tell us about this project here.
Oh, I am so excited. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this, because this international movement, this will be an international movement. The Lioness Leads is leading off with a book anthology. As you mentioned, it's called The Lioness Leads, Stories of Triumph Over Fear. And what this book anthology does is I brought together 14 dynamic and powerful women who are leading, whether in education, whether in government, whether as entrepreneurs. They hold positions of leadership. And what they're going to do is share their stories of how they have triumphed over fear, how fear tried to limit them in their leadership. And they'll share portions of their story about how they've overcome it. You know, one of the things that's very common for women in leadership is fear. There is the fear of whether they will be accepted from a gender standpoint, because perhaps they work in an industry that is male dominated, and how will they, you know, be able to get a seat at the table and you know, in such a circumstance, and having that fear and their anxiety of how do I show up? You know, if I show up being too strong, then I'm deemed to be too masculine. If I show up, you know, being too passive, then will I get ignored in the space? And so there's always this fear narrative that's happening for us as women in leadership. And what people often don't see, Dr. D, is they don't see that challenge and that struggle with fear. Okay. Because let's face it, we have this understanding of leaders that we're always on.
Right.
That we're supposed to always be strong. And this is male or female. We're always supposed to be on. We're always supposed to have the answers. We're always supposed to be the go-to people. So rarely do we have space and opportunity to deal with our humanity as leaders. Yeah. Rarely do we have an outlet to talk about our struggles and how we have overcome them or are overcoming them. So the Lioness Leads, Stories of Triumph Over Fear, is an amazing opportunity for other women in leadership to be inspired, to be motivated, to be encouraged to deal with their own struggles of fear and get some strategies about how to overcome. So these narratives are not just about the challenge, but these leaders are actually sharing, this is how I've overcome. And I think that that is so needed because it brings us into a mentorship component of leadership that is so important that we talked about in the last segment. That as leaders, we really need people to mentor us and let us know that we can navigate the challenges that come along with being a leader. And so to me, this is such a perfect time to have this conversation and bringing women in leadership to the forefront. Yeah. And so beyond the book anthology, people can expect a mentoring program that's going to come out of this work, where we are going to be nurturing arising young women in leadership and helping them along with that principle of leading up from the inside out. And the goal is really to help to alleviate some of the weights and the challenges we've experienced as more experienced leaders, but helping to nurture
That's right.
new leaders who are coming up. There's also going to be a space for convening to bring women in leadership from all around the world together so that we can be continually encouraged,
Yeah.
developed as leaders, and so that we have a safe space to do self-care and to do self-work.
Yeah.
So there's so many pieces to the Lioness Leads, and I really love the visual of it. We chose the lioness because I think what most people don't know is that when it comes to lions and lionesses, it is the lioness who is really the backbone of the den.
Yeah.
She's the one who's going out, getting the food for the young. She's nurturing the young cubs. She's even defending them when necessary. There's so much that a lioness does to pour into other people, to prepare them to move in their own way as leaders, and how they are an example, even in being so strategic. And how they operate with their prey. Like there's so many connecting points between the lioness and women who are in leadership. So it's just a perfect time to talk about it. I mean, here in the United States, we have a vice president for the first time who is a woman, Vice President Kamala Harris. And so, it's an amazing time to talk about the power of women in leadership and how that power is needed in partnership with men who lead. Like they go hand in hand together, but I could go on and on. So I'm gonna press pause and let you jump in.
No, I just love, I love your energy as you're talking about it and the passion. So I already know that you put in some quality work and, connected with some wonderful people with that character that you talked about to just make this whole project complete. And you mentioned it's an international thing. It's not just regional, this is going to be big. So, you all look out for that. When is it? Did you give a release date?
Yeah, so the book anthology comes out scheduled for release November 8th, 2021. So we are working diligently on writing and publishing right now. We've got an amazing publishing team who is getting us through this book anthology. And at the same time, I am working on the Lioness Leads University, which will be a coaching.
Wow.
It'll be a hybrid coaching course where you'll get the benefit of developing your skill set from a course standpoint, but it's going to include a group coaching approach as well. So you're going to get the best of education and coaching simultaneously. So more will be coming out about the Lioness Leads University as well. So people who want to keep track of what we're doing with the Lioness Leads, they can go over to thelionessleads.com.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I love it. I love it. I love that concept. Taking that thing and we talk about leadership lineage, and I'm imagining the people that you're going to influence with this whole piece, with the project, the anthologies and the universities. Mm-hmm. Oh, I just said universities. Oh,
yeah, you did. You did say plural. Where did that come from, Dr. D? I said the Lioness Leads University.
Oh, I done started something there. But no, I'm excited about it. Yeah, I'm excited for you, and I look forward to supporting it any way that I can.
Absolutely.
When it drops. We're going to go ahead and take one more break, y'all, and then we're going to come back. And then we're going to see how Dr. Synetheia N. Newby, how she plans on checking for understanding. We'll be back. Okay, everybody, we are back with the one and only Dr. Synetheia N. Newby. And in this segment here, listen, in education, we have this thing called checking for understanding. And basically is when teachers are delivering the lesson and they want to make sure that their students are grasping the concepts and the instructional, objectives and everything. And so they do different things. They use exit tickets. They may have some type of assessment. And there's a saying that goes like this. In school, you learn the lesson and then you are tested. But in life, you are tested to learn the lesson. So as we go into this piece, checking for understanding, Dr. Synetheia, I want to ask you, we've been through this pandemic. 2020 hit us hard. It's no question about it. So I ask you, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's ascending to reach her max potential, who's on that platform, how did 2020 and the pandemic impact you, and what did you learn from that? Now that we are in 2021, that you can look back and say, 2020 taught me that.
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Yes.
Because I think the pandemic experience brought us a lot of lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the lessons has layers to it. Like there's lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur in the pandemic. There are lessons that I learned just as a woman, in the pandemic. There are lessons that I learned relative to my spiritual development and my faith. And so to pull out one lesson is, wow, what's the one lesson? But if I had to choose one, I would say that the pandemic taught me that it is possible to thrive in a famine land. Here's what I mean by that. So many lives were lost during the pandemic. So many jobs were lost. People lost. There was a lot of loss that happened in 2020. But for me, it was a season of thriving, even in the midst of so much loss. What was very interesting, Dr. D, and I'll speak to Dr. Synetheia, the entrepreneurial leader, because coming into 2020 in January and February, I had been on a venture as a full-time entrepreneur since 2018, and business had plummeted for me. Okay. So by the time we got to 2020, Dr. D, I was in a place, literally, my house was in foreclosure. I was on the cusp of losing everything that I had. Because I had sold so much into business. And if you're an entrepreneur, you understand that the learning curve is always curving. There's always so much to learn as an entrepreneur, right? And so it was challenging for me coming into 2020. And so I believe we went into quarantine, was it March 13th? I think it was, of 2020. Yep. Literally a month before we went into quarantine, I was able to secure a new position in local government. Wow. Literally a month before. And this was after months of seeking employment. And Dr. D, I had so many doors closed in my face. I was told that I was overqualified because I had finished my doctorate in 2019. So now as I was applying for employment, I get these responses back that I was overqualified. I couldn't even get a job in a temp agency because I was overqualified. Wow. So 2020, even before the pandemic hit, Dr. D, was rough for me. But literally, this door opens for me. So going into the pandemic, when so many people lost their jobs, I became employed. And I had stable employment throughout the pandemic. I had health insurance. I had a roof over my head. So the thing that was almost a loss in January, February, was now back secure by July in the midst of a pandemic. Wow. And so that's why the lesson for me that you can thrive in a famine place is so big. Because I realized how the circumstance could have turned out if I had not secured employment. I could have been amongst the ranks of others who were unemployed, who could have lost my home and so many other things. And so the pandemic also taught me gratitude. Okay. Right? Yeah. So not only did I thrive by getting a job, but there was a shift that happened in my business where all of a sudden my business started going back up again. Okay. So for almost a year where business had been down, Now, all of a sudden, business
Yeah.
is on the uptick.
Yeah.
And so gratitude is so big because I realize that there's not much that separates me from those who lost so much. It could have been me.
Yeah.
Right? It could have been me. And I have such an awareness of that has carried me into 2021, wherein you realize that it's so important that we don't take things and people and relationships for granted. And that's even a classic lesson for us as leaders, that those whom we're leading, let us not take advantage of them or assume that we'll always have them. Let us not treat them as though they are just byproducts. Okay. It's an honor to be able to lead other people. And we should be so conscious of expressing that gratitude, even to those that we lead. So for me, the overarching lessons of 2020 even fold into more of who I am as a leader because I've become more grateful. So there's less complaining now, right? Because it's easy as leaders when things aren't going our way for us to whine and complain. Yes. So 2020, it teaches me to be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the people that you have. Be grateful for the people that you're able to serve as a leader. So those are some of the lessons that, are key for me from 2020 that really ride with me into 2021 out of the pandemic. And so many other layers I can pull in of really understanding how my faith was so integral in that process. Dr. Synetheia, coming into 2020, my faith was at an all-time low. Because sometimes when you go through so many struggles and so many challenges, sometimes it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But then you have those moments that happen that remind you that there is still light. And so that's why I say it's so many layers for me. It's layers for me as a business owner, as a woman of faith, as a person of faith. There's a lot of layers. And so, that's definitely my takeaway, though. Thriving in a famine land and gratitude.
Awesome. Those are words of encouragement, man, because like you said, we lost so much. Yeah. Lost so much and so many. There's people still recovering, or they might not even consider it recovering. They're still stunned, trying to figure out, what the next step or what the best step is to get back to whatever normal. It's so much uncertainty. Yeah. So much uncertainty. We don't know where we're going. There's a school of thought that believe that we are getting things somewhat in the right, we're going in the right direction. Then there's another school that says, hey, we might be in a worse situation than what we were. Now, I don't know what side you all that's listening, I don't know what side you stand on. As a leader, I'm going to always be optimistic.
Absolutely. I don't think we have a choice. Yeah. Right. I think as leaders, we can ill afford to be anything less than optimistic. Absolutely. Because people are looking to us to be a guiding light, right? And it doesn't mean that we have all the answers. Right. It just means that people look to us as a source of hope. They look to us and count upon us to be able to help them to navigate when times are good and when times are challenging, like a pandemic. Yeah. They look to us. We can't afford not to be optimistic.
That's good. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. And that separates the effective leaders from the ones who still need to grow a little more.
Yeah, exactly. And growth is exactly a good point, Dr. D, because if we struggle as leaders with being voices of hope and optimism to those whom we are leading, it's a reflection, again, those deficits that I talked about on the inside. Yeah. It's an opportunity to go inward and say, what's happening on the inside of me that I'm unable to bring this side of myself into leadership? Why is it that I struggle to bring in an optimism? Why is it that I struggle to bring in hope? Because we don't get to choose the circumstances that we lead in. We don't get to choose. If the pandemic didn't teach us anything else, the landscape can change swiftly. Yes. And as leaders, we have to be able to adapt and to move with agility and flexibility into new circumstances.
Yeah.
We have to be knowledgeable in change management. And how do you navigate that? And I think the pandemic showed a lot of leaders that they were not as strong in the area of change management. So now it just becomes an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an opportunity. So now maybe I can link up with Dr. D, who clearly has that strength, and find out, man, how are you doing it? Yeah. How are you making it happen? Give me some tips, give me some strategies, so it just reminds us, and I know we haven't talked about this, how leadership is community as well. We can't lead in silos. We need community.
Absolutely. That's a part of growth, taking a page from each other's book. Seeing how you have, just listening to your story with what has happened in 2020 to you and how you have rebounded from that, man, that's inspiring someone else, and so therefore, as that person is learning how to lead whatever they're leading, whatever business, whatever organization, department, they can take nuggets from Dr. Synetheia N. Newby's story, and they can apply that to their lives, and it goes back to that leadership lineage. You just never know, as you're sharing your story, and as we talked about being transparent and being trustworthy, you just never know who's impacted by what you have gone through. So now they're saying, wow, if she did it, it can be done.
Yeah, it's the power of storytelling, and it's part of the reason for the vision of going back to the Lioness Leads, stories of triumph over fear. It's really their stories, and storytelling is so very powerful.
So powerful,
right? Because storytelling says that we all have a story. We all have a narrative. And in that story and in that narrative, every part of it is not perfect. There are some glowing parts that are amazing, but they're also they're also the hard places. It's what I call the ugly pretty of leadership. Right? The ugly pretty of leadership means that leadership is it's a wonderful thing, but there's ugly parts of it. And those are the parts that leaders don't usually talk about, but that's where the power lies.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, me just sharing a snippet of my story is going to be helpful for someone else. But what if I chose not to be transparent and be vulnerable enough to say, this was my experience as a leader? So our stories are powerful. How dare we cheat people out of the power that lies in our stories?
Yeah. Man, yeah, you hit it right there, and that's why we vibe. That's why we vibe, because you say the ugly pretty. I've had this thing where I just came out and said, hey, leadership sucks. Like, there's so much about leadership, but I love it's a great platform to stand on, because you're able to empower other people. Okay, so I had to clean it up. All right, so a quick story. You talk about storytelling.
Yes.
So, quick story, and I'm gonna really chop this up. But I had an opportunity to speak at this event, and that was my straight up title. That was my topic. Leadership sucks. I knew that was going to grab some attention. Like, oh, but at the same time, it was brought to my attention that it can also come off as offensive, because, some people might have thought about where I was speaking. They might have thought that I was saying that the leadership of that organization. But I was speaking of leadership as a whole. So I got smart, and I changed it. I changed it to leadership stinks. But they were like, nah, that's still the same thing.
So you all stink as opposed to sucking?
I try to clean it up, and I finally got it to the point where I called it the lovely stench of leadership. And that goes perfectly with the ugly pretty.
The ugly pretty of
Yeah,
leadership.
I love it. I love it.
I think we both have books on our hands. Don't you see those as book titles, Dr. D?
So, yes, I do.
You know, as a person who's in the final editing stage of the Liberated Leader, and but
Yeah.
I think we have books on our. I mean, can't you see it?
I can. I really can. Listen. Look, we need to talk a little more about this because it's in my mind. I already have it, kind of broken down. It's just a matter of just taking action, But yeah, it's some powerful pieces, some powerful concepts in there that I think it will equip our I don't want to say young leaders, because not all leaders, chronologically aren't young, and that's
Right.
totally fine. But
Right.
you got to start at some point.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
who are learning leadership, I think there's going to be some powerful nuggets
Mhm.
within that whole piece. Now,
There's some leaders that are in their 50s and 60s, but they're young in leadership
absolutely.
because they're just starting to embrace the lessons that will really make them effective as a leader.
Come on now. You better believe it. You better
Mhm.
believe it. So
Yeah.
if that very same leader that you're talking about,
Mhm.
if they're looking to find Dr. Synetheia Newby,
Yeah.
Dr. Synetheia N Newby, they're looking to follow her work, and they're looking to learn and grow and develop, regardless how old they are.
Yeah.
Where can they find you?
Great question. So on all social media platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, or on Facebook or Twitter, you can find me at I am Dr. Newby. My username and handle is the same across all social media platforms. I am Dr. Newby. And also, right now, I'm going through a wonderful rebranding process for both of my businesses that I'm very excited about. So my temporary website home is Sociotap/I am Dr. Newby. So that's SOCIATAP/I am Dr. Newby. You can find me there until my new websites are launched again.
Awesome. All right, y'all. She gave you all the information. So y'all make sure you all follow, like, subscribe, do all of those things that you do on social media. I don't have to, reiterate what you need to do. You know what you need to do. She's wonderful people. You already heard her ability to speak and her ability to lead and all of those great things that separate her from, other people. She's phenomenal, y'all. She's on top of the game, man. So this is definitely someone you want to follow. You want to kind of model your leadership approach, based on some of the principles that she presents. So listen, Dr. Synetheia N Newby, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. D.
You and I can talk about this thing like forever.
I know. This is so rich. It's so rich. So I thank you for the opportunity to just have this brief conversation with you. This is amazing. Thank you for this platform.
Sure. Absolutely. And anytime you want to come on, just let me know, and we can definitely make that happen.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys.
All righty. Have a good one.
Bye.
I truly appreciate you all taking the time to chime in to the Infinite Impact Leadership Podcast. Be on the lookout for the leadership series called Checking for Understanding, where I'm going to sit down with some awesome leaders to get their perspectives about what they've learned in 2020 and how it will impact their 2021. So you do not want to miss out on that. You can find more work and posts and interactions on the Facebook page, Dr. Daryl Crosby. So go ahead and like the page, as well as become a part of the Infinite Impact Leadership Group on Facebook, and chime in with some of the discussions and ideas that I shared with some wonderful current and aspiring leaders. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Daryl Cross. That's DARYLCROS. So follow me there too, and I'll follow back. Go ahead over to Apple Podcasts, leave that 5-star review and that comment, and I will be sure to shout you out on a future episode. There's so many ways to connect with me and everything that I'm doing. Your support is greatly appreciated. Meanwhile, remember that leadership is a platform, not a pedestal. We've seen firsthand what poor leadership looks like and what it produces. Don't be that one, because there are generations that are dependent on your leadership.